Okay, number one, make sure you know how to use the trig ratios, right trig ratios using SOHCAHTOA. So, SOHCAHTOA. So if you are doing the sine of x, start at x, opposite of x is 24, and the hypotenuse is 25. That doesn't reduce, so you're done. The sine of y is start at y, opposite of y is the 7, and the hypotenuse is still 25. Cosine of x is start at x, adjacent, because cosine is adjacent divided by hypotenuse, is 7, and then the hypotenuse is still 25. Cosine of y adjacent to y is 24, and the hypotenuse is 25. Doesn't reduce. And then the tangent of x is start at x. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite of x is 24, and then adjacent to x is 7, because you don't want to include the hypotenuse. Tangent of y is opposite is 7, and adjacent is 24. So make sure you can write trig ratios and then reduce. Okay, down here, number 2, calculate the angle measure, theta. This is pronounced theta. So, if you look at this angle measure, theta, you have this side right here. So this side is opposite. You also know this side right here, this is the adjacent. So you're going to use the tangent ratio. So the tangent of theta equals opposite 3 divided by adjacent, which is 6. So since you're trying to find this angle measure in your calculator, you do tangent inverse of 3/6, or 1/2. So in your calculator you do tangent inverse 3/6, and you're going to get a degree measure. So make sure you answer with degrees. And then number 3, you're trying to find the length WV. This means the distance. You're trying to find this distance. So looking at the angle measure, I'm going to write OAH again. You want to know this distance. We'll call this x. So this distance is the opposite. And this right here is the hypotenuse because it's across from the 90. So you have the hypotenuse. So the O and the H stands for sine. So you're going to do the sine of the angle measure, 20 degrees, equals opposite, which is x, over 12, the hypotenuse. So to solve for x, you do x equals 12 times the sine of 20. Or in your calculator, you can do x equals sine of 20. Make sure your parentheses are closing, times 12. And then round to the nearest. If it says tenth, use 1 decimal. If it's whole number, round to the nearest whole number. And then number 4, solve for x. So I'm going to write OAH again. Looking at 27 degrees, you have this side, 11, which is adjacent, and you want to know this side, which is the hypotenuse. So you're going to use the cosine. So the cosine of 27 degrees equals adjacent 11 over the hypotenuse x. So to solve for x in this equation, you're going to multiply both sides by x to get it out of the denominator. This cancels out. So x cosine 27 degrees equals 11. And then you're going to divide both sides by the cosine of 27 degrees. So this side length is going to be your answer. And then number 4, I'm going to write OAH. Look at the angle measure that you have. You want to know x, which is opposite, and you already have the hypotenuse. So O and H is going to be sine. So the sine of the angle measure, 35 degrees, equals x over 7. So to solve for x, you just multiply both sides by 7. So x equals 7 sine of 35 degrees in your calculator, or sine of 35, make sure you close up the parentheses, times 7. And round to the nearest whole number or tenth, whatever it says. And then solve for x. X is an angle measure, so we know at the end we're going to use the inverse button. So it's going to be either tan inverse, cosine inverse, or sine inverse button. So if I have this side, this is the opposite, and I have this side, this is the hypotenuse, I'm going to use sine. So the sine of the angle x equals opposite, which is 8, divided by hypotenuse, which is 11. So since I'm trying to find the angle measure, I'm going to do the sine inverse of 8/11 on my calculator. And that's going to give me my angle measure. And then number 7, solve for x. So we have this angle. We want to know what x is. X is opposite, and we have this side, which is the adjacent. So we're going to use tangent. So the tangent of the angle measure, 35, equals opposite, which is x, over 10. So to solve for x, you multiply both sides by 10. Or you can do x equals tangent of 35 times 10. You can do it that way too. Okay, make sure you understand angles of depression and elevation too. So an angle, I'll draw it up here, but let's say you have this person up here, this person down here. Draw your horizontal lines in. Connect them. This right here is equal to this because they're alternate interior angles. And their angles are adjacent to the horizontal lines. So this is called an angle of depression because you're looking down, and this is the angle of elevation. So when you have these type of problems, draw the right triangle that corresponds. So down here, move that here out of the way, a control tower is looking at a plane taking off. If he can see the plane at an angle of elevation of 15 degrees, and the plane is 2,000 meters above the control tower, what is the ground distance from the plane to the control tower? So you have this control tower, go like this, and then we have this plane. The plane is 2,000 meters above the control tower. So here's the plane. Not the best plane, but oops, okay. So always draw your right triangle in. Here's my right triangle. The 15 degrees can either be right here or right here. We know that the plane is 2,000 meters above the control tower, so this distance is 2,000 meters. So we are trying to find what x is. So if we want, well, you can do two things. We have to answer in kilometers, so you can either convert now or you can convert at the end. I'm actually going to convert right now. So 2,000 meters is actually 2 kilometers. So my answer is going to be in kilometers. So if I know this angle measure, this side that I want to know is the adjacent. This side, what I already know, is the opposite. So I'm going to use tangent. So I'm going to do the tangent of the angle measure, which is 15 degrees, equals opposite 2 over x. So then I'm going to solve for x by multiplying both sides by x. This cancels out. So x tangent of 15 equals 2. And then divide both sides by 5. So I don't have my calculator, but x equals 2 divided by the tangent of 15. And that's, you're going to want to answer in kilometers because the directions say answer in kilometers. And my key will be online too with all of the answers, but this is just the explanation. Okay, number 9, sketch each angle in standard position. So you always start right here on the x-axis. So negative means that you need to go down this way. So this will be negative 90 degrees. This would be negative 180 degrees. this would be negative 270 degrees, and this would be negative 360, back to the original problem. So if you're going to go negative 200, you're going to start right here and going down 90, negative 180, and go up 20 degrees more. So I'm going to draw in, make sure you draw in your arrow what direction you're going, like this. Positive 150, you're going to start right here, and you're going to go positive, which is this way. So I'm going to mark it. This is positive 90 degrees, this is positive 180 degrees, this is positive 270 degrees, and this is 360. So you're going to go up 90 and go up 60 more, so you're 30 degrees short of here. So make your arrow. This is 150 degrees. And the last part, use the unit circle. So you want to draw the unit circle and special right triangles. So remember our special right triangles that we had. Oops, I didn't leave myself enough room. So 45, 45, 90 is 1, 1, root 2. 30, 60, 90 is 1, root 3, 2. But we talked about the unit circle being having a radius or a hypotenuse of 1. So this would change to 1, this would change to half of that, and this would be half of that. This would change to 1, and this would be root 2 over 2. Once you rationalize it, and this would be root 2 over 2. So what I'm going to do is, if I have both of these 30 degrees, I mark off 30 degrees, like this. Then your right triangle needs to make a right angle with the x-axis. Put your 30 in and label your side length. So my hypotenuse is 1, opposite the 30 is 1/2, and then the long side is root 3 over 2. So if your coordinate is right here, cosine is the x value. So how far did you go over? So the answer is root 3 over 2. Because this x distance is root 3 over 2. Sine is the y distance. So how far did you go up? And that was 1/2. So draw your right triangle, write the ratios out. Cosine is always the x value, sine is always the y value. Or you could do a cosine is adjacent, which is over this, divided by hypotenuse. So this divided by this is root 3 over 2. Now let's do cosine 60, sine 60. So 60, like this. Drop a 90 right here. 60. So this right here, the radius is 1. The long side is root 3 over 2, and the short side is 1/2. So now the cosine is the x value, which is positive 1/2. The sine value is the y value, which is root 3 over 2. And then cosine 45, sine 45. Draw your 45 degree angle in, drop down, make a 90 with the x-axis, 45 degrees. So this side is root 2 over 2, this is root 2 over 2, and the radius is 1. So then cosine is the x value, which is root 2 over 2, and sine is the y value, which is root 2 over 2.